Good morning, everybody. If you're in WA, good afternoon. If you're on the East Coast, I hope you're well. I hope your Thursday has started very well indeed. Thank you for popping in today. I'm just going to do a little bit of screen reorganization here. There we go. We should be good to go. Yeah, and welcome to today's live market update and charts of the day, the Thursday edition. I hope you're well. I hope your Thursday has very well indeed. Uh, Thank you for So yes, let's start by, of course, popping up this important message, just to remind you that this is for educational purposes only. Please make sure you do your own due diligence on anything you see here. Make sure you follow trading plans and make sure you manage risk on every trading action. That would be wonderful. That's managing things within your own sort of personal risk tolerance, and of course, on entry and exit where risks exist in both cases. Let's pop to, let's try and pop to this and let's have a look at the headlines today. There we go. Should be good. So Nasdaq hit new highs last night. Nvidia led again. Um, Obviously, this is a stock that I've been banging on about for quite some time. Um, on the trade front, which is obviously front and center of headlines this week, Trump suggested that there was no extension of any tariff pause, and the 50% tariff, which clocks in on copper from the 1st of August, has obviously sent copper price to record highs. Watch for more Trump social tweets or sorry, posts over the next couple of days with little in the way of data to influence markets. That's what markets will be focused on, I would suggest. US futures are a little lower so far today. Asian markets are mixed. The ASX is up with materials doing well. European futures are pointing to a cautiously positive open on the back of that um, positive session on Wall Street, which saw the S&P 500 hit its first win in 3 days. Um, the USD, I talked last night, for those of you who managed to make it to Inner Circle, um, that obviously didn't do particularly well, pausing, failing to hold on to the gains it made earlier in the day, and so it remains very much so in that downwards trend channel. Gold, as a result, bounced off that 3,300 key level again. Copper, as I've said, was at record highs. We'll look at charts of all of these in a moment, and oil paused at the top of a range, failing to breach that key level again. We talked about that last night. Um, Sorry, I've Bitcoin is still, if we'll have a look at a chart, but still sort of eyeing record highs. Trade news, as I've said, is going to continue to be important. In terms of data today, you've got the US weekly jobs. Outside of that, very little that's going to influence market sentiment significantly. We do have UK GDP and Canadian jobs data tomorrow to finish off the week. Wouldn't be surprised to see a um, pullback tomorrow night, just in light of what may or may not come out over the weekends from um, Trump's enthusiastic typing fingers. Anyway, let's check out. Let's see if we can just. You should see on your screen some futures, which is sort of good to see that they've come up okay. You can see that the US futures are slightly to the downside. Um, there's that positivity in the European futures. The DAX is actually closing in on a high. Very little movement in oil, little bounce in gold. Of course, copper's continuing to rampage its way upwards. Weakness in the USD this morning, and just Bitcoin's just pulled back a little bit after eyeing those record highs. A little bit of strength in the Aussie dollar as well this morning versus the USD. That might be worth checking out. But most currencies are up around about 0.2% against the USD if you look at the individual crosses. Popping into the ASX in a little more detail. Let's just do a refresh And you can see there it continues to move ever higher. Yeah, it's come up. Okay, that's good. As I said, 0.75% to the upside, so 0.75%, which is the highs of the session. If we look a little closer in terms of what's doing well, materials are doing very well, but generally speaking, across the board, positivity. In fact, the utilities, healthcare are all looking a little tricky. Oil, because it didn't hold those gains that were prevalent in the Asian session yesterday, um, just a pullback today. If we look quickly at that's the US market, quickly look across Asia, you can see the Nikkei is the underperformer. Japan's really quite worried about um, the tariff situation. But you can see all the other indices are slightly to the upside. Um, and there's the man himself. So obviously those countries which are major copper producers, of course, Brazil is a big one, are going to respond accordingly to that tariff imposed on copper. Be interesting to see what Australia do, to be honest. Right, okay, let's having successfully negotiated the internet for first time. Let's have a look at some charts, shall we? So here we let me just there we go. It should come up any second. All good. So if we just there we go. Okay, so if we look at the Nasdaq 100, you can see there those on the futures contract just smidged a record high, but it was the close of the major indices, which was positive. We've got a nice line in the sand actually. If there is any more buying at around about 22,900, possible move up potentially towards. There we go. Possible move up potentially towards 2300 if it breaches that level. If we look at the S&P 500, just pop that on as well. You can see here that not quite as perky in terms of record highs, but pretty well close. And you can see that that 3-day losing streak snap. You look at this morning, you can see it did pull down a little bit on early trading, but it's starting to come back okay. Um, just quickly checking on this. Um, thanks to all. Before I move on, thanks to all of you who have said hi to Wayne and Roger and David. Thank you very much on the heads up about everything being well. It's always reassuring to hear. Let's have a look at the USD, and you can see they're still very much in this downtrend on the daily chart. We did get this bounce earlier in the week, but you can see that was short-lived. If we look at the hourly chart, you can see we've shown enthusiasm a couple of days ago. That happened, and then of course we've got that gap this morning, and that's taken us back down to this key level, this key resistance it breached. But as I said, and I've said many times, I'd probably trade the US dollar crosses rather than the US dollar index futures. Consequently, of course, there's gold bouncing off that 3,300 level again. Looks as though it's set. Remember, 3,350 is the really important level on gold. Let's just put a line there, and we'll have a look at the extended chart. So there could be a sort of pause within this sort of 325 to 3,330 level. But I quite like this to move back up to test that key level at 3,350. You can see how many times it's been important technically. Support, support, resistance, support, resistance. So that's what I suspect might happen. But as for copper, there we have it. Another strong day in Asia. Whichever way you slice it, this has been a good place to be. And you can see that this is record highs on copper. By some considerable distance. And Then on to oil. Now, oil looked as though it was going to breach this 68.72 when we were chatting last night. But you can see it just pulled back towards the back end of the session. So now we're stuck in a short-term range. I'm going to change this to blue. There we go. So plonk that back on the daily chart. So we've got this short-term range between 68.72 and 69.51. So wouldn't really be interested in a long trade unless it breached those highs from yesterday and the day before, which now are beginning to look a little bit resisty, if indeed that is a word, or possibly one I've just made up. More likely, perhaps, is as it sits at the 200 MA, if it fails to breach this on another session, we might see it drift down mid range to around about 67.50. So there could be an opportunity there. 68 would be the 68 would be the high probability trade. If we just take it back, you can see why and how it might fall to this sort of 67 type of level. As for Bitcoin, we are testing record highs in Asian trading today. You can see we breached that 11,000 level. Let me just move that up to record close, which was 111,083. If we look at the hourly chart, you can see we shot through that at the end of US trading, and then before US market close gave some significant profit taking back below 111,000. Asia's a bit mixed today, but we do now have some reasonable lines in the sand to keep an eye on. Certainly 111,838 looks like an interesting level to the upside. Possibly 110,600 might be a level where we might see it drift back down to 10.9. So a couple of key levels there, but at this stage in Asia looks a bit mixed. But that profit taking on that big surge upwards doesn't look significantly dramatic. But the fact that we've not pushed up does appear to be suggestive that there isn't a massive amount of appetite in light of what's going on to go higher from here for right now. Keep checking on this possibly when the Europeans wake up. Be interesting to see with that increased trading population jumping on whether there's a move up again. Let's check out the USD crosses. What will US tariffs do to copper? Roger, we've seen what they're doing to copper. It's interesting that copper has done so well on the back of those. Maybe there's some concerns about supply, certainly, but undoubtedly copper prices are going to go up to accommodate. Although that money may go in the back pockets of the US administration. So very interesting. I might even do next week's Inner Circle on a deeper dive on copper in light of what's happening here. If that would be useful, give me a yes if that would be something you'd like me to do. It's been a while since we've done a copper deeper dive. Can certainly do that. Let's look at some of the USD crosses. I said this is probably a place to have more interest. If we look at the daily chart on the USD yen, you can see we've got a short-term resistance here around about 146.60. It looks as though we're bouncing downwards from that. And possibly this could be a little bit of profit taking early doors, I think. There's the level to keep an eye on. If we're going to close beneath 145.83, then there's a possible move down. A very clean move down to 145.10. This was our chart of the day yesterday when we were doing Inner Circle. We actually called this on a breach of 146.50, and it did exactly what we thought. In fact, by the end of the US session, it would have hit the profit target that we suggested. That 25 pips bagged. we're obviously down to the next key level with a potential bounce. So a move either side of here, the downside looks to me far more attractive than the upside. So a breach of 145.83 looks interesting. On the Euro USD, you can see there we're in a trading range, potentially with the bounce off 117 support, with 118 to the upside, so 100 pip range for the Euro USD, looking slightly closer at an hourly chart. This sort of looks a bit messy to me. It might be difficult to get a run on this, which doesn't pause. So I'm not that keen on Euro USD unless you're trading a longer term concept. If we look at the Aussie US, this actually looks slightly more favorable from a technical point of view. But we've got a key level there at around about 65.50. You can see their support on the 2nd and 3rd and 4th of July before we got that breach to the downside on the back of that RBA decision, of course. But we've got actually, sorry, this was the RBA decision, wasn't it? That shot it upwards after that double bottom. So is there likely to be further upside in this? Well, if there is, it's possibly capped to around about 65, 66. So only about 16 to 18 pips maybe. So before we hit major noise. So again, I'm not jumping up and down. FX has been like this all week, really. So I've not been that enthused. If we look at the Aussie yen, you can see a nice bounce in this. And again, predictable level for it to bounce from. If we look at 95.38, that was the key level, potentially back from the swing high on the 3rd. So a bounce up here, but into space there. Sorry, into a congested space there. So that's not enthusing me much. Euro yen's pretty flat. But I did have a look at the Euro Canadian dollar before we kicked off. This was sort of catching my eye a little bit. Let's just pop it on the daily chart for context. So you can see there we've got a clear line in the sun to the downside at around about 159.52. We've come up significantly from then, around about 100 pips. And the next port of call on this is around about 161. So we translate that to a shorter time frame. And so this is a potential trade of interest. There appears to be a little bit of a pause around about this sort of 160.70 level. You can see here that was a wick high, a reversal at that point, support at this point. This was the high of today at 160.68, which wasn't breached. A little bit of a pullback on that, perhaps a little profit taken from that early Asian trading. But this is possibly a level worth keeping an eye on. 30 pips in that. So I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you the Euro card if it breaches 160.70, and the Euro USD if we should get a breach of 145.83. So there's a couple of charts to play with for today. And now let's have a look at the ASX. We've already checked out what the overall market's doing. Let's have a look at some individual stocks. Vulcan Energy, we referenced yesterday in the Inner Circle session, has been a really significant move. There we've got some consolidation of that. We're pushing in on the $4 mark. Possible move up maybe to around about this 405 level in the first instance. So I'm not jumping up and down about this, about the potential upside. So I would be waiting on this. There's just too much action on the daily chart as well as on that hourly chart to say that 405 is a good level to get interested in. If anything you want me to have a look at, just let me know. There's about 9% up to that 200 MA at around about 440. So I quite like this as a potential short-term trade to push us up to that level. But you need to be patient, 405. Parenti, we talked about this on the session earlier in the week. We've now had a breach of 163 and a half, which is really quite significant. We're up to 67. 168 is where the sellers are at the moment. Um, this was the intraday high that we hit about 8 trading days ago, so a week before last. Um, so 168 looks really important for this. On a weekly chart, you can see it's record highs. Sorry, highs that have not been seen since back end of 2019, mid 2019, actually. Lots of potential upside on this. I like this stock. It's very well run mining services company. And this is setting up very nicely on that breach. I think this, if it holds this level and this candle structure into the close, then that's enough for right now. But if you're looking for an intraday trade, you'd wait until it had breached that intraday high there. So those are a couple of ways to play this potentially. Harvey Norman also caught my eye this morning as I was having a look around and seeing what I could see. Pushed back up after a pause for a few days around about this 540 level. 553 looks like a resistance that was last hit back here on the 4th of June, so around about a month ago. And in context, again, should we breach this, the next significant level is around about 475. So not a deal breaker on this in terms of booking your flights to Europe, but nevertheless, there's a fairly healthy 4% there, I would suggest, on the cards. Some of the financials are having a bounce today, but they're not filling me full of happy joy feelings. But we'll put on QBE as an example, CBA also. I just want to check out Origin, see if they're up again today. No. If we look at ANZ as another example, ANZ are probably the pick of the bunch in terms of technically being interesting. 30, 40, but the upside on that is limited to around about 4.5% potentially before it gets stuck in this here. So I'm going to give you two to keep an eye on. I'm going to give you Parenti and Vulcan Energy. Those are the two that have caught my eye today as charts of the day. Right, onto the US very quickly. We've got a continued rise in NVIDIA. There was the level of interest around about 159. We've reached that a couple of days ago and have just sort of ground higher a little bit. As I said, my prediction for this is a $200 stop within 3 months. Tesla's looking very interesting here. It looks as though it just refuses to breach this sort of 290 level, which obviously historically is technically significant on the back of this double bottom type of formation here. The fact that the 200 MA is sitting around there, the fact that we had one day here before it bounced again, and a potential move up to 330. So certainly those of you who pop into the next bar sessions will be looking at this and what Cameron does with Tesla and thinking, is this an opportunity for a nice quick 10%? And possibly it is. I mean, in extended hours trading, it's not breaking any records. And obviously, Trump's announced his potential new party as well, which is interesting. So the way I would play this, if you're looking long term, this looks like an interesting level to get into. Short term, then as I said, there's that potential move up to maybe mid 320s, and so a breach of maybe wait till 300 is breached just for confirmation. Maybe worth checking in the last hour of the US session if you're awake at that time. Microsoft, you know I like Microsoft, and we did breach $500. Extended hours today, not following through on that, but that's an important breach at 502 on Microsoft. So keep an eye on Microsoft, keep an eye on Nvidia, and if you're feeling brave, then Tesla. So all the big tech stocks doing well. If you want something outside of tech, Chinese internet stocks are certainly not where to be. I'm wondering whether Delta, whether the airlines are worth a little look at. Travel stocks have had a bouncy ride over the last month or so. But Delta looks interesting. Should it get up to 50 to 80? then there could be a nice move up to $60. And the other one that I thought might be just worth keeping an eye on is Robinhood, the broker. It has had a pullback of late, but looks as though it might be done and had a good session overnight. We've got some support now in place at 91.03. $100 is obviously going to be a key level. You can see there we tested it on these two candles here. So a move up of around about 6% to retest 100 looks possible. So there you go. There's a few things to keep an eye on. If there's, as I said, just a review. We like NVIDIA, we like Microsoft. Robinhood is a potential side issue on the ASX. Vulcan Energy in the lithium space, Parenti as a mining services industry, both look strong. In the FX world, we like the US yen, but that does appear to be bouncing. So keep an eye on that midday, and just keep a sneaky eye on the euro Canadian dollar. As I said, FX not filling me full of happy joy feelings today, but well worth a look. And finally, of course, a couple of lines in the sun to keep an eye on. Gold, watch that 3,350 level, and of course, oil. I did suggest that if we get a move down through this 68.72, we could see some selling. And copper just keeps going higher. Anyway, that's it for today and for this week for our live updates. I hope that's been interesting, useful, giving you some stuff to think about. Those of you who are part of the EA group, I think there's a session tonight. I will confirm that. Outside of that, watch out for the commodities. Don't forget to click subscribe on the video to make sure that you're notified on your phone. Thank you for those who have clicked the likes already. If you wouldn't mind just giving a little thumbs up on your way out, that's awesome. It just helps the YouTube algorithm a little bit and means that I get to ramble on in front of even more people than you guys. So that's always a good thing. So thank you very much. You guys take care of yourself. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks heaps. Have a good one. Catch you later.